Stack us up, nerds. It's time to stack those hundreds. Welcome to the Competitive Commander podcast. I'm your host, my name's Riley Knight, and I'm joined, of course, this week and every week by my two co-hosts. First up, it is Toffel, Severin. He's in Berlin. How you going, Toffel?
Hello.
And we've also got on the line Jamin, Kauf. Now, Jamin, normally we have an enormously spectacular entrance here for you with some outrageous fact, but this week, I don't even have to make anything up because we are talking to the actual, literal, most successful and decorated Brawl player of all time. Jamin, It's an honor to have you.
It's an honor to be here, as always.
We're going to get stuck in and have a chat about how your weekend was, Jamin. But, I mean, first of all, for anyone who didn't get across it, Jamin was the inaugural Brawl Challenge champion. He went 10-0, didn't drop a game, and absolutely crushed it. And as a result, this week, we're going to have a good long chat about Brawl. It's the latest up-and-coming singleton format, both competitive and casual. It's been getting a lot of attention, and we're certainly going to shine a spotlight on it this week. But, of course, before we do that, it's time for the catch-up. It's time for the catch-up. Big weekend of Magic this weekend. Of course, the Dominaria pre-release. Everyone was very, very excited, the three of us included, to get our hands on the new cards. I mean, I don't know about how you guys went, but I had a terrific... I had a terrific weekend in terms of, I had a lot of fun. I didn't have a terrific weekend in terms of games won or matches won. But, I mean... We don't have to get into this too much, but first glimpse of Dominaria seems super, super sweet.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff to value out, right? Legendaries, kicker cards.
Yeah, it's so cool. Every card has multiple effects, and then even your 2-drops become good 5-drops later on. It's just so great.
So I got in the car, drove up to Dundee, which is a little bit further north, up towards the northern end of Scotland. Well, no, actually, no, Scotland's actually huge. Scotland's a lot bigger than people. It's not this little hat that England's wearing. It's almost as big as England. So I drove a little bit further up northwards to Dundee. A couple of mates up there. We played the pre-release at Highlander Games. It was fantastic. Really, really good shop. Great people as well. Although, unfortunately, very, very good players. Often you go to the pre-release and you're like, I hope I can sneak through the first couple of rounds just with, the easy pair. Oh, no. I was playing some of the best players in Scotland, and it was rough. It was rough going there. I went 2-3. It was not the result I was hoping for.
What result are you hoping for?
Well, the 5-0 clean sweep, but my friend Anand, actually, he went 4-0 and then had to go to a dinner, and so just dropped. He dropped at 4 and I had to leave early. I know, the big rub-ins. He came and he told me, oh, sorry, man, I got to head off. But after his undefeated run, it was pretty insane.
You know what you should do? You should maybe think about going into casting the pre-releases.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
then I'll, yeah.
Yeah, then you'll always make day 2.
Yeah, always emerge positively. Oh, jeez. Toffel, I know you didn't get the chance to head down and play paper pre-release, but you were jamming online, right?
Yeah. I it's not about not getting a chance. I just get more volume in online, and it's a bit more comfortable since we actually have the GP next week, and you have to learn all the cards and the interactions and. Our pre-releases have 100 people, and I think this time it was actually 100, so they go for 12 hours.
Yeah, our store had 100 players on Saturday, which meant that there were only a very limited amount of players to being able to play on Sunday, which normally is super awkward, but they somehow made it work. And
yeah, but drafting as a point or playing sealed, the format seems interesting. I think I'm a bit ahead in limited with the ideas I'm having, which this is not the right point because this is a Commander podcast. No, the 2-drops are really bad. There's no 2-drop that gets bigger, so 1/3s are insane and all the stuff. I think at this point, specifically when the limited environment is so quick ahead in tournaments. Next week there's the Team GP. Nobody can really read out of other articles and ideas. They have to learn and build something themselves, and that's pretty good. I like it.
Yeah, it's pretty raw. I mean, any format in its infancy is really going to have a lot of stuff to learn. I guess another format, and we're going to talk about this a lot more, that's in its infancy here is Brawl. I mean, it's only been introduced in the last couple of weeks. The first challenge was held on the weekend, and Jamin, you want to share with us how the Brawl challenge went for you?
Yeah, it didn't went too bad, right? The whole I didn't drop a game.
Actually,
it
that's
didn't go
true.
too bad. I was just undefeated, just absolutely romped and stomped all the way through it.
That sounds much better than it is like in the actual results part. You didn't drop a game is actually also the match, but it sounds so much more impressive. I like it.
But yeah, the challenge was actually huge. It had 103 players or something, and so that was 7 rounds of Swiss, and then top 8. So yeah, quite happy with that result.
For those of you who may have missed it, you mean actually streamed the top 8, and I got across most of it there, and there were quite a number of people following your success there, you mean, and I tell you what, the deck you played was just bananas.
It is probably the deck with the highest power level in a given format that I've played in a while, and I have played Eldrazi during Eldrazi Winter.
So we're really talking about that level of dominance and sort of almost oppression, really, right?
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, let's talk about that story more later, because without Toffel, I wouldn't have even played the challenge.
There's a lot of moving pieces to this story, so let's get into it. Let's get into that and answer this week's question. So it's time to get stuck into the business at hand. This week's question is, what's going on with Brawl? And it's a question with a fair bit of meat on the bones, and I thought, I mean, in the wake of your stunning and quite unlikely victory here, it's a great place for us to jump in and explore what is effectively another competitive singleton format. You know, we generally sit here and talk about 1v1 Commander as a 100-card singleton format with a competitive edge to it. Brawl has been designed for casual play, but already online, it's picking up a lot of traction as a pretty robust competitive format. Sam Black, Brad Nelson, there have been some pretty huge names in Magic who have already been stress testing Brawl and really putting it through its paces.
Well, any format where there's prices on the line online will be optimized. People will try to win. But yeah, that's just what happens when you put a format online and put treasure chests on the line, guys.
I'm sure most people are probably already across the rules, but for those of you who may not be exactly aware what's going on with Brawl, the rules are very similar to regular Commander, except you only play with 60 cards instead of 100. So 59 card deck plus a Commander. The Commander can be any legendary creature or planeswalker. But the big twist here is that the entire deck has to be made with standard legal cards. That means that if a card is banned in standard, so attuned with Ether or something like that, it also can't be played in Brawl. Apart from that, it's very similar to 1v1 Commander. Best of one. There is the same rules when it comes to Commander color restrictions. I guess the important thing to note here is that the Commander damage rule doesn't exist.
You have to get your opponent dead from 30, and there is no way around it. You can't just hit them twice with Galta or something.
Another important thing to note here, and maybe this is the one that we should sort of start off with when we're talking about the texture of the format. Toffel, you were talking about how the fact that people can have planeswalkers as commanders really is just, it opens up all these new avenues.
It's just a natural thing. Like, planeswalkers are sweet, they're legendaries, they actually capture the sense of playing this commander, right? You're Tiferi, you're Dark Faden, or whatever you want to be, and then you just play the planeswalkers idea. And I think not letting them being played in the 1v1 commander is kind of faulty. I can see why you shouldn't play it in a 4-player or like multiplayer, because the games go so long. If you have planeswalkers as commanders, nobody attacks, you have to attack them, they don't do damage. Like, this is actually an issue, but I think in the 1v1 thing, that could be a good change. And in Brawl, it's just insane. I mean, you can play Tiferi, that's so cool.
It hasn't been the planeswalkers just yet that have really made the biggest impact on the format, however. I mean, it's super sweet that you can have Raska as your commander, or something like Nicole Bolas, but this, from the outset, people were sort of saying that this was just going to be sort of a Scarab God meta, and that there was going to be no other real viable deck. This is obviously not true at all, because again, the deck that Jamin has played was not a Scarab God deck, and it is just absolutely busto. But why don't we run through some of the other decks that have really been performing well at the inception of this format here?
We assumed Scarab God would be good, because you play Scarab God in Standard for him being able to come back all the time, and the answer in Standard that exists is to exile Scarab God, right? Like, they play the Vraska's Contempt, they play now Castaway, like everything at least for a certain time before, and I think now also revolves around being able to answer Scarab God. And in Brawl, there is not this clause of being exiled is gone, because it just goes to your command zone, you cast it again. So people were very afraid that Scarab God is too good. But it turns out it's not that good. Just also against other regular decks. It's decent, it's fair, but it's not overpowered. And there's reasons, of course, because other commanders are also quite strong. Galta is very powerful. You can play her a lot of times because the power gets still, the mana cost gets still reduced by the power on board. So even if it costs like 14 or 16, if you just play another creature, it's the same commander text reduced. And yeah, as we said, commanders as like planeswalkers are really good. You can play a good Teferi deck, a good Nicol Bolas deck. You can see there are so many different options in deck building, and since it's standard, you don't get quite punished for having like a slower thing or a bad commander per se, because you just play lower cards of power level in general.
Yeah, the power level of the format is much lower, obviously, and much more forgiving of experimentation, of unoptimized lists, of things that are a bit sort of rough. I mean, across the 10 rounds that you played during the challenge, I mean, were there decks that stood out to you as being, what are some of the decks that came to your mind in terms of what people should know about the format?
During the quarters and the semis of the challenge, I played against two different players playing Galta. So apparently she's pretty good, since she placed into top 8 and top 4 respectively. And then what I've also seen is Zakama, who is the 9-mana dinosaur that untaps all your lands when she enters the battlefield. And I think that can actually work out really well, because your deck just rams, and then plays Zakama.
So, Jamin, do you want to know a fun fact about that?
Hit me.
The top 8 actually was 2 Galta decks and 6 times your deck. So you only got the 2 other decks.
So I dodged everyone until the finals.
Yeah. Like you had basically the dream scenario of matchups there.
So everyone else was slamming and jamming in those mirror matches, and Jamin is just facing down the 12-12 trample. Well, actually not facing it down, as we'll talk about. Galta as a monocolored green deck. I mean, these monocolored decks in Brawl mean that you've got an even more reduced card pool in a card pool that's already not particularly broad.
I tried building a monocolored deck yesterday, and you really have to play some mediocre cards.
Well, is this the reason that, we talked about Nicol Bolas as well. Nicol Bolas, the God Pharaoh, this is one of the few, I guess some more 3-color commanders have come our way with the release of Dominaria, but this is one of the decks that I guess has been putting up a name for itself. What is it, just Grixis Control? What's going on there?
Yes, you can say that. the good control cards in form of every removal, the good counter spells, and some value. The problem with 3-color is that it's hard to build a mana base in standard if you only can play lands once. So some challenges are to play all the good cards in those colors, but still being able to cast them. A lot of the 2-color, like same color cards you cannot play, like Sweltering Suns is really hard, although it's really good, and Vraska's Contempt and blue counter spells. So you kind of have to play a 2-color deck and splash the other. But that's why Nicol Bolas is so nice, because it costs a lot and also you only uses 1 of each. And besides that, if you play the good cards, it's such the dream of a control center player, right? Play removal, some counter spells, and then you always have Nicol Bolas.
Yeah, your finish is just sitting there ready and waiting. So it's an interesting point you raise about the fixing, because that was something that has been talked about and written about at length. I know Frank Karsten wrote about what Brawl mana bases were going to look like with the fixing that was available across the standard card pool at the moment. And I guess, is this why we see someone like, Teferi, the new Teferi, Hero of Dominaria? Is this why we have him as something else that other control players are kind of rallying towards?
Teferi is cheaper and also cooler because, well, it's Teferi. Like, Teferi is awesome. He has a built-in removal spell. He has a built-in card draw. He's able to protect himself. So just the whole Planeswalker is cheaper and just much better. But you're restricted to playing white. And white is not as good as red and black. So I think standard is just a premium format for this to implement, because your spells aren't too strong, you have some nice decisions, and playing the color actually matters because there's few replacements of the same effect. And you have to take into consideration that your commander might be good, but your card pool isn't.
It's an interesting point you raise because obviously, I mean, in 1v1 commander, we see a lot of decks that are sort of, especially these mid-rangey ones with the partner commanders, they tend to be, somewhat homogenized. They're playing all of the good one-mana interaction. They're playing similar kind of threats, and they tend to kind of sort of merge towards a common core of, let's say, 30, 40 cards. Whereas, in standard, as you said before, you really have to kind of dive deep and uncover the hidden gems.
Also, something else I want to point out here is how easy it is to build a new deck or to try out new cards. All that, the standard card pool not being that big and not being that expensive to purchase on Magic Online, you can just slam and jam new deck lists through a league at an insane pace. It kind of reminds me of a game like Hearthstone where you make a change to your deck list, slam another game, and then go back to the drawing board. It's just, you can try out so much stuff without a huge investment, neither in time nor in money.
Well, let's talk about this further. Let's talk about this a little bit more when it comes to Brawl and the incentives to play it. I know that a lot of the pros. I remember. I think it was. I can't remember who it was actually who tweeted about having an extra use for cards that they had already. I mean, these are people, and it's not just pros. It's people around the world. You go into drafts. You're playing sealed. You're trading. Whatever else. You're picking up cards here and there, and it's nice to have these sort of second and third tier cards. Getting a run, getting their time in the light in a format that has these deck building restrictions. And on top of that, it's a lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper than many other formats to get into. Again, because you're not playing 4 Chanterers, 4 Hazarets. You don't immediately slam multiple copies of Search for Azcanta into your list. But the fact that you're playing one-ofs means that necessarily your deck is generally going to be a lot cheaper than a standard deck.
I was surprised how much the deck cost that we actually played, and it even got much cheaper. And also, you were playing standard anyway because it's the most popular format, a lot of the people. So people are preparing with their collection to have a standard thing. You draft the most recent set, so you get a lot of cards from those. And if you play every card once, there are not many cards if you draft maybe once or twice a week that are missing that you cannot just buy from any source and then have the deck ready.
All right, well, let's talk about the list, Jamin, that you piloted to this perfect undefeated finish and became the inaugural Brawl Challenge champion and the greatest Brawl player ever to have lived. You characterize this deck as being powerful, as being oppressive, and Toffel has also just said it's very cheap. This doesn't really line up as something that most people would expect. Jamin, tell us, what did you play?
I took down the challenge with Brawl, Chief of Compliance. He's the 2-mana 1/3 that makes... What a surprise!
A monocolored commander, you say? How did you do that?
The story how I got there is actually interesting, and it involves you, Toffel.
Oh, yeah.
No one would have guessed.
I would have known. Now that you say it, I didn't realize that.
I do remember having the same influence there. Yes.
All right, so on the Sunday of the challenge, I was playing a pre-release, but I didn't completely play the pre-release because I was actually really tired because I had lots to do the rest of the weekend. So I went home, and then Toffel messaged me saying hey, do you plan on playing the Brawl challenge? And I was like, probably not. It's probably going to be really crowded, and also I'm tired. I don't want to play 7 rounds. The challenge starts at 9 p.m. for us Germans.
Well, no, sorry, I'll stop you there. It doesn't start at 9 p.m. for Germans. It starts at 9 p.m. in Germany. If you're a German living in the United States, you don't get a huge... There's not a special clock that German citizens have to register to.
No, didn't you know that it's by German law? If you're German, all your clocks go according to German state.
Yeah. Also,
right. Doesn't matter where you are in the world. You still... No, well, I am not. I think you will find that you are the late one because I was here perfectly on time by German time.
Yeah, and if you can present it to somebody there, like, this is superior. It's like if you go an American night to a bakery, it's like, you should be close. It's 9.
Yeah.
It's 9 a.m.
I would like a Streuselschnecke, thank you.
And
Sir, it is 4:30 in the morning, and I don't know what a bloody Streuselschnecke is, all right?
you have to see, we are on point. We are very workative.
Toffel, no one argues with the workativity of the Germans. You are known as a diligent and efficient people.
And the reason we can do that also, overextending to like other countries, because sometimes you have to go somewhere else and work and stuff. It's because we know it's 9 when it's 9, you know?
Yeah. So at this particular instance at 9 p.m. at 21 Uhr, what's happened?
There was the challenge, and well...
I mean, I know. I was just trying to prompt you to get back on the story.
Yeah, but it happened before.
But thanks for reminding us.
It happened before. The challenge started at 21, but...
Yeah, right. The challenge starts at 9 p.m, and the story before is that, like, at 8 p.m, Toffel messaged me, do you want to play the challenge? And I'm like, no, there's already, like, 30 players in the challenge, and there's still, like, an hour to go to sign up for it. And then he's like, no... You really want to play this challenge because this deck's really broken.
I didn't make myself clear. Do you play the challenge? Because at this point, you have to play the challenge. This is not a question. This was mandatory.
Yeah. So apparently that Brawl deck is like really broken. He made that clear to me. So I thought about it and I signed up for the challenge, right? Because on our Discord, there was also a discussion about the same deck going on. I obviously hadn't seen a list or anything, but when 2 different sources say that the deck's super broken, it probably is.
Yeah. So I guess we come now to our point of the story. We wanted to play the Brawl challenge because for fun, like, if you can play a Commander challenge, you can also play a Brawl challenge. And Sunday evening is usually much better than Saturday evening because you're at home anyway. So we wanted to play this, but we didn't have any clue which deck is good. And we estimated like Galta is good and you can play everything. We just play Nicol Bolas and slam a good deck. And then on Sunday, the friend Arne Huschenbeth said, okay, we have to play...
Who top 4 GP Amsterdam with you, right?
Yes, exactly. He's the standard go-to thing. Like when I have to play standard or any constructed format, I usually ask him what I'm playing, and then he says, "You're playing this." And we figured, like, he said, "Okay, we're playing Brawl," and it's like, Brawl? I mean, standard pool is pretty small, and also like we know Brawl from Commander and was so oppressive that it got banned, but only because of Polymorph and the Emrakul instance. So.
But the core engine of the deck was very similar to what happened in 1v1 Commander. It was just every single counterspell you could possibly name, and then sort of a combo-esque finish that would end things very quickly thanks to the looting ability. Even if Brawl in Brawl doesn't have that same sort of polymorph into Emrakul thing, the engine of this deck is just ridiculous.
Yeah, but I don't think that Brawl would be as strong if he only plays with counterspells and fair, because the plays you can make in eternal formats are much stronger. Your creatures are better. You can also counter back and stuff. So I think this would be a much fairer, like a lot fairer fight than it is in standard. So he showed me the list, and it played basically Brawl and only counter spells and card draw and some interaction. And yeah, I guess spells getting cheaper is fine. And then we started to play the League, and I have never seen any like this before. This is what I think it would have felt like playing Pro Tour at 1999 or something. There was no way that our opponent had a chance. We basically locked the game on turn 2 about like every time. Like you play Brawl, you're untapped, you have 2 counter spells, you have counter spell removal, you draw, you loot, you put your lands away. It's absolutely insane.
If you untap on turn 3 with Brawl, it's ridiculous. You just won. And
we lost against the Brawl Mirror, and then I played it. I did the same, playing for 1, lost against the Brawl Mirror, and we just figured out there's against a non-Brawl deck, you have like, I think 85 to 90%.
Yeah, it's insane.
I mean, those numbers are this is something that bears repeating. Like, we're talking about a matchup against the field Not against this isn't Tron playing Jund. This is a deck that has a matchup against the field of, what, at the barest minimum, 80%.
Yeah, I think that's assessed correctly. Like, there was no game besides the Brawl games I think could have been lost. In most of the games, I wasn't dealt damage. And in some cases, there was like some fight over the board. But as soon as you stick Brawl and clear the board, that's fine. There is the most, like, the biggest issue is there's no cheap interactive removal spells. Like, there's Fatal Push, there's Lightning Strike, there's a Braid and stuff, but a lot of people play like 3 to 5, I guess. So your Brawl is usually safe, and sometimes you just play Brawl in 3 and then counter it after. And once it sticks, all your spells are so good. Like, you play actual counter spells in limited, like in standard.
Suddenly your cancel is actual literal counterspell, like a card that is so good.
Better, much better.
In Modern. Oh yeah, it's actually better counterspell because you also get to loot.
Yeah,
it's insane.
And what makes the deck, I think, so broken is you can play a lot of cards that are in situation really, really good, but sometimes extremely terrible. Like Jace's Defeat, for example, which is horrible. You cannot play it if you don't play against glue. But since you can loot it away, all your cards spike because the best case happens so much often, and the worst case is just throwing it away. So your deck consists of good counter spells and cards that are really strong in a lot of situations.
So, you mean, how did the tournament go? I mean, you talked. We've already said you went undefeated. Can you just give us a broad overview of what your road to the finals was like?
The first few rounds, I only get paired up against non-Baral decks, which is obviously very good. And that's when I start to realize how powerful this deck is. Like, the first round I played against Gonti, and I'm on the play, and I play Baral onto untap, and I realize the game is over. Yep. And Gonti even has some good tools. There's discard, you have duress, which is like a cheap spell you have to counter, and other discard, but it doesn't matter. The game was over.
At this point, I think it's very likely that they will never resolve a spell anymore.
Yeah, and they actually never did resolve a spell, and that was round 1, and then round 2 was, I can't remember, it was another non-Baral deck, and I think after 3-0, the Baral mirrors started to come in. I remember playing against Zakama before, and that was really sad, because Zakama is the 9-cost dinosaur, but unfortunately she can just get countered. Like, we talked about how she might actually be good, right? Because all your deck does is ramp out Zakama, and then Zakama is really powerful. Well, yeah, getting your Zakama, like, censored is really bad.
Yeah.
So
she would be good if it would be a cast thing.
Yeah, definitely. Or, like, at least better. So round 4 rolls around, and starting there, I only faced Baral mirrors in the Swiss, so like 4 Baral mirrors, I think. And I got pretty lucky there. Oftentimes my opponent would miss land drops, or not have the best draws, run out of counter spells or something.
Jamin. Magic is a very skillful game. There is very little variance involved. I'm sure it was just a masterclass of pure, unadulterated, masterful magic.
Yes, let me correct that. I outplayed every single one of my opponents.
No, but without going into any of those edges, the mirrors are actually really hard. And
yeah, they're really hard to play.
As in about every control mirror, you have to do so many micro decisions that have an effect later. Like, do you play a Baral on 2? Do you play which counter spell to use? Do you even counter card draw? All these things. And sure, sometimes your opponent doesn't play a land or something, but I think most of the games you're just good because you know those counter interactive games a lot.
Yeah, it's a very different kind of Magic you're playing, and I think I'm not the worst at like thinking into those kinds of games. But I was also tired, so like I don't know. I can't judge my own play, but there was some amount of luck involved, definitely. And then in the top 8, as I already told you, there was Galta and Galta. Those weren't really fights. Like the semi-final was actually like there was like a game. And then in the finals there was another Baral mirror where that was a really sweet ending. I got to flip Azor's Gateway, which is on the flip side it generates as much mana as you have life. So I generated like 30 to 35 mana or something.
It was 34. You're on because you've been hit for 1 by the opposing Baral, and then you gained 5 when it flipped. And I think you you went from watching it. You went float 34 mana, cast something in response to their counterspell, cast pull from tomorrow for 10, counter that, and then the opponent was just like, I'm done, I am out of here. See you later. Thanks for playing. Goodbye. I'll take my runner up, and that's that. You absolutely crushed it. It was really, really fun to watch. You're a careful and meticulous player, I would say, Jamin. I don't think you're not quite sort of glacially slow, but I like the way that you talk through decisions. And the reason I'm talking about this is because people can go back and watch this. You've actually put up an edit of all of the top 8 on YouTube. The link you can find it in the show notes there, and you can go back and watch Jamin navigate the top 8 there and get past. I mean, yeah, some pretty tricky situations, especially in that mirror match.
Yeah, like the mirror match has tons of tricky situations, and whether or not you like Brawl as a deck in Brawl, because currently it's super broken, the mirror matches are super skill intensive. Like, there's no way around it. It's super broken against everything else, but the mirror matches are actually like super interesting and super hard.
Even coming down to, on turn 2, do you play Brawl or do you play Treasure Map or do you play Search for Scantia? Look, I actually don't know which one is better.
Well, it depends on the rest of your hand, I would say, and if you're on the play or in the draw and all of that. Like, there are so many decisions to be made, and it's insane.
So, Toffel, you were also playing Brawl as well, and some other guys in Berlin were too. What was the story there? Were you playing the exact same 60?
No. No. Aaron and I played about the same list, making one different card. Just like we played one card off, and we planned for Jamin to play our list, but something got lost in the mail, I guess. Like, I told Arne to send him the list because I was on my laptop.
Like via what? Deutsche Post? What?
And Arne sent it to a different friend. He was like, either I said the wrong name or something. So Jamin didn't get our list.
So I took one off of our very qualified Discord.
Off the Stacking Hundreds Discord.
Yes. That sounded a bit harsh. Like, he actually means that it's very cool.
Yes, I'm not kidding.
No, he wasn't being... Yamin also... I mean, Yamin's like 17 years old, and basically everything that he says sounds like it's dripping with irony and sarcasm. But I think that was earnest appreciation of the folks in our Discord, right?
Yes, without them, I wouldn't have a list to play because Toffel never sent one. And then I asked him, like, did you send it? And he was like, yes, I totally did.
I faxed it over to you. Didn't you get that telegram that I sent you?
So just to round out the story, who did you get the list from?
From my finals opponent. I'm not kidding.
Spencer Bott.
Yes.
Thanks, buddy.
So apparently our Brawl, our Commander Discord was 100% of the finals in skill and deck.
So any way you slice it, Brawl is the undisputed king of the format, definitely the best deck in the format by the widest margin. We're talking about a deck that is super, super dominant and super, super oppressive. Is this deck finished? I mean, given the fact that the format is so new and these decks are still kind of being developed and workshopped and tweaked and twisted and whatever else, and I mean, you two had differences in the lists that you played. What's going on with Brawl sort of more generally? Have we landed on the perfect list? Are changes still being made? What's going on here?
So after winning the challenge, I obviously wasn't satisfied, but
of course.
No. Well, that's not true. I was very happy with.
You could have had a much better result than winning the challenge.
Well, like my curiosity hasn't been satisfied because I took this list and I basically just played it. So I sat down to stream with it a lot more, and I made some more changes to it because I found some cards that were included in my winning deck list. I didn't find them to be very good or especially bad in the mirror or stuff like that. So
I think the best way to assess this is to compare our two deck lists, because it seems like you play a monocolored commander, the deck list should be about the same, but there are a lot of different spells, and since the basic counter spells are the basic setup, a lot of the big spells differ. And this is really interesting for me because, well, you won and we didn't, and while I think that's a bit bad job spending, it's also very interesting because nobody knows what's right? You just have ideas, and there are a lot of cards in your deck list where we thought this is horrible, and probably the other way around. So we just want to find the best version from us.
Yeah, let's compare homework here.
Yeah, let's compare homework. So what I can see is we play both Mox Ember, which is good. I didn't play Opt because I wanted to play a land more. So
I think there's like too many flex slots to. Did you play the last land over the Opt?
Yeah. I played one more land instead of an Opt.
I think there are other cards in the deck that are worse than Opt.
This is kind of minor, and I think that's okay.
Yeah.
I just want to note you're playing 23 lands.
Yes.
I played 26.
Okay. Well,
you want to play a land every single turn. I guess you haven't had a problem as well as
I really hadn't. Like I've been playing 23 lands plus Mox for the whole time, and I really didn't have huge amounts of problems.
It's the typical. I was screwed twice, so it's the typical Magic Online way. No, but the lands are about the same. We played a hostile desert, which I think you didn't.
No, I also had I considered it afterwards, but I don't think the creature really makes a difference, and sometimes the colored mana is actually really important.
Yeah, and Ether Hub, I didn't like it. I just play. I don't think the one energy for Dynavolt Tower is enough.
Yeah, I also cut it after winning the challenge.
You play Azor's Gateway, which I find insane, and it's stupid that we didn't play it.
Yeah, it's really sick. If you flip it, you nearly always win.
Like this is the one card I would say it's more important than Brawl. I think the other ones are not as important because you can deal with them. Treasure Map is a bit more card advantage, which is good, but not super important. But as soon as you flip Gateway, it's broken. You cannot
the mana advantage is insane.
Yeah, and you played Expel, which I think is really important in the mirror. Because I think the way to win the mirror is to bounce the Brawl and then counter everything.
Yeah, you mean Expel from Oraska, the 2 mana.
Yes, 2 mana bounce a permanent and then put on top if you have
the City's Blessing. Yes, it has done great work for me, and I've also added another bounce spell since, because getting rid of Brawl is really good in the mirror.
And I think this we have a certain problem where we want to talk about playing against Brawl and playing against other decks. First of all, the deck is insane against other deck. It doesn't really matter what you cut from it. It's still good as long as you don't cut counter spells. You can also cut some expensive spells because you get to your win options quite easily. But playing cards against Brawl is super good, and you have to do that. And that's why you even play Jace's Defeat. So that's cool. We played a Kefnet. And
I saw that afterwards in some of the other deck lists, and I wondered how good was it. Tell me about it.
The idea was to play against the Brawl, resolve it, and then just have more cheap winning spells, because your expensive spells get countered a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it was fine-ish. It wasn't too good because most of the time you drawing for 4 mana a card leads your opponent to bounce it or to bounce something else. It was good. I wouldn't say it was fine. It was play. I would not play it over Dynavolt Tower though. Like Dynavolt Tower is, if you play it again in Mirror, you just beat Boral with it, and that's so key.
You reckon? I dislike the card after all.
Really?
For me, it's always like the super slow engine that has to get going, and then they bounce it. They bounce it when you have 4 energy, and then you just never get to go.
I don't know. I just got to a point where my opponent had this, and I could never cast Brawl again, and that was so hindered.
I guess that's the dream scenario where you don't have an answer. But for me, it's always like this thing that you play, and then it gets bounced, and they just counter it on the way back down, or.
If your goal in the mirror is to play Brawl and be the only player to have Brawl, this is supreme, I think.
Maybe I should give it another go. Maybe in the games where I had it, I just didn't get around to casting too many spells. So
besides that, you're playing 3 more counter spells that we didn't play. You played Countervailing Winds, Lookout Dispersal, and Unwind.
Oh my god, Unwind. That card is so bonkers.
It's probably good in a mirror, yeah.
It's so dumb.
Yeah, I guess.
Let me cast this for 2 mana. I'll untap 3 lands, and then I'll cast a draw spell. Oh, it's so good.
I can see that. And in that, we played Hornswoggle instead of one of those.
Yeah, it turns out that countering creatures just doesn't matter really.
Not against Brawl. Like, this was actually more in mind of other decks.
Yeah.
And having a treasure is kind of neat. Like,
Yeah, I agree. Treasures have great utility in the.
So besides that, that's the same. I started in the beginning. I thought Asphodel was really, really good, and then I kind of now find it bad because
that's a bit of a win more card, right?
If you play it in the mirror, then it takes a lot of time. It costs you a slot. They can bounce your Brawl, and then it's much worse than having Brawl in play. And I think against the other, you don't need it. It's neat and does cool stuff, but I haven't found it quite relevant.
Yeah, I always thought about it as a mana advantage you're building over your opponent, and I think when it's good, it's always like it always feels great. But oftentimes, I think it's not necessary because you can always just like when you're using Asphodel, you'll often have mana. You often have excess mana, so you're not even using it to its full potential.
Like, it's important at the point where you really use all your mana in the one key mirror turn, but this needs a lot of setup, and I think there are better cards than this.
Yep.
So 4 mana, we have the same. We played an Inspiration,
Yeah,
which I didn't know was playable, but it was. So I think that's pretty good. Like, I was shaming on Inspiration, and it turned out to be great. Like, if you don't do anything, you cast instants. And we tried Precognition Field. I didn't like it.
Yeah, it was terrible in the challenge. I always hated it. Like, it's a way to generate card advantage. For those who don't know, Precognition Field is the 4 mana enchantment that is basically future sight only for instants and sorceries. And in theory, it's a way to generate card advantage, but in practice, it just turns out that it's way too situational, and like it'll take ages for you to draw like 2 cards off of it. It's a bad card. Don't play it.
Yeah, it's just so intense. And even when you play counter spells, sometimes they don't play anything, and you have to draw it, so it doesn't really do much. So it was a bit awkward.
Yeah.
And the one card I really liked was Insidious Will, the counter spell.
Have you? I thought about that. I've looked at that card after like looking at the deck again, and I thought like, I never use any of the other modes. It's just a 3 mana counter spell with Brawl.
Yeah, you know where I use one of the other modes?
Pull from tomorrow?
No. No, this doesn't target. You mean you copy it or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Like, do you know which card in your deck targets?
Oh! Oh!
Yeah.
What Toffel's talking about is River's Rebuke and Karn's Temporal Sundering.
Yeah, like the redirecting the Karn's Sundering was cool, to say the least. Yeah. So
it's the new Time Walk, the legendary sorcery that lets you take an extra turn and bounce a non-land permanent.
Yeah, you can also change the bounce.
Oh, you can change both targets? That's really good.
So and like all of 3 modes are really good, and I think this is powerful enough to play it. And yeah, sometimes they make their big haymaker, you counter, and then you can redirect it or copy it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty strong. I would choose to keep that. And you didn't play on 5 the Baraud's Expertise, which is your River's Rebuke, and I think River's Rebuke is much stronger.
Yeah, I was always happy with River's Rebuke. Against Brawl, it's obviously not that great, but it can be useful sometimes. Sometimes you'll find a spot.
Even then, sometimes you just pick a fight on their turn and they resolve like a Nizahal and stuff, or some of the artifacts, or even people played and the Immortal Sun thing, which we had in the list but cut because it was too expensive and didn't do anything. So the River's Rebuke is much better. And you played the Sundering, which we didn't play, which I think is also correct.
Yeah, the Karn's Temporal Sundering is great.
The only thing, and that's the thing that's the last card we have to discuss, because that's the only thing I think is, and that's also the reason why River's Rebuke is much better than Baraud's Expertise, is that you played Entrancing Melody, and we played in Bolas Clutches, the 6 mana control magic.
Yeah, I see.
Whenever I played it on a non-creature spell. You played it on lands, I played it on artifacts, I played it on enchantments. It was so good.
That's pretty nice. Yeah, after going over the deck again, I cut Entrancing Melody. Mm-hmm. But And I don't know about in Bolas clutches. I don't think I like that too much afterwards, but they're very similar cards, right?
So from what I see, I think your list was specifically in this field much better. But you also, considering that Brawl will be a major player, or I guess the most important player right now, you also changed a lot, right?
The day after the challenge, I actually streamed quite a bit with Baral and kind of refined the deck list to be a bit better against the mirror, because that's the only thing that matters right now, right? Because you're already so far ahead against everything else by just playing the core of the deck, like all the counterspells and the card advantage engines, that you only really have to win the mirror match. And in that consideration, I took out the Gear Hulk because it's just not a good card in the mirror. I added more card draw. I added another divination. I also took out the Dynavolt Tower, but maybe I should give that another try if you say that it's that good in the mirror match for you. Like if you had that experience, I'll probably try it again. Yeah, but the biggest change for me really was the Gear Hulk.
Yeah, that sounds so...
It sounds wrong, right?
I don't want to say bad.
Mono blue control deck.
Yeah. So what I felt is when playing Georg against Baral, it just gets essence scattered like all the time, and it costs 1 mana. You play like 6, and it's a horrible experience.
Yeah. Also, even when it resolves, it's not that great. Like, sure, now you have kind of a clock, but it's not insane.
Well, resolving is great. I mean, like you the worst thing they can do is bounce it, and you play it again. If it resolves, I guess your opponent doesn't have any counterspell whatsoever, because it's a must counter. But there are worse things that can happen in response to you playing it.
Yeah, definitely.
Like if they bounce your Baral in response, I think that's much more dangerous.
Yeah. Like,
so I actually like this. That's good. I have a question.
Hit me.
Some people rip 15 boosters to play a desert. You don't even play a desert, like the Desert of the Mindful.
Yeah, I was weirded out by that too. Like, it didn't make any sense, but I think I like it because you can loot away your lands anyways, most of the time.
Yes, I understand. Yeah.
And a tapped land is actually a really big cost sometimes.
I understand your point. I think it's wrong. And the reason is not because you can cycle it. The reason is because it's a desert and you win over the rivulet.
Have you actually won a game through milling? I haven't.
Yeah, I won multiple games. We also play 4 deserts. We play Scavenger Grounds, Hostile Desert, Desert of the Mindful, and Rivulet. Of course.
Oh yeah, definitely. With Scavenger Grounds, it's a bit different because then you get to exile their commit to memory, which is like the main way to prevent decking.
This is good. This happened a lot, that the Scavenger Grounds exiled this.
Because when you're playing Baral, you always have to be careful with where your commit to memory is, because you don't want it to get exiled, because games will get close to decking.
Yeah, sometimes you lose your win options and then you can't win.
In the challenge, I had to disallow a Scavenger Ground, because lands are one of the things that you can't interact with.
Yeah, that's true.
You just don't do anything against them. You can't counter your opponent's land drop.
So... yeah, and that's like also you can disallow the Nezahal, which is the only way to get rid of that, basically.
The Nezahal ability, you mean?
Of coming back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like not going out.
Of course.
If you counter it the first time, like if you counter it, then it doesn't come back. The only other way to get rid of it is to commit to memory, and it's what doesn't really get rid of it. And Nezahal is super good.
Yeah, Nezahal, if you're facing down a Nezahal, you better have a plan of getting rid of that or like decking your opponent, because otherwise you're not winning. And
that was the sweet part. Like, my opponent cast Nezahal and I could deck them because I just played 4 instants and they had to draw.
Yep, that's a thing that can happen.
Awesome. Yeah, I actually played also a few more leagues after that because the deck was just so sweet, and I can see how people don't like it or like playing against it, but I mean, that's Brawl for now.
Yeah, it's Brawl.
And I played against a few mono-red lists, and I think mono-red might be a way to beat Brawl. So the question would be like, do you think this deck can be beaten?
I think so, yes. But I haven't done all the work yet. I've tried Ovia, which is a 1 mana 1/2 in green, like an aggressive mono green list. I don't think that's the answer.
Because you can sneak it in early.
Yeah, you can sneak it in early, and then they can't interact with the activated ability. But it turns out that like it won all the games against against Brawl on the play, and it lost all of them on the draw. I don't think it's the end-all be-all answer. Like things you have to do when playing against Brawl. If you, in theory, want to build a deck that beats Brawl, build a deck that has removal for Brawl early, because the deck oftentimes taps out on turn 2 to slam Brawl. Or, like, try resolving removal against Brawl, try getting rid of Brawl. And then also apply early pressure. Play spells that they can't counter yet because they don't have counter spells open yet. Play 1-drops, play 2-drops, play 3-drops, I don't know, like... Be aggressive. Don't play your sweet 4-mana Planeswalker.
Yeah, that's why I think like the red decks are pretty good against it. And it felt like it was a very different game once people played Karizev or Captain Lennery Storm. Like they play creature and it's like, no, stop. I want to do something.
yeah. Stop beating me down.
So it might be that it's not like all over.
Yeah, but you still have to build like a very specific deck just to beat Brawl, and then you kind of have that rock, paper, scissors metagame.
Which is a good metagame, but I don't think that the red decks are so useless besides that. Like, you can still play against Galta, or so you play some thing that take over creatures, like the expertise is probably really good.
I guess there's still some development going on, and we'll have to see where that goes. Maybe someone will find a deck that beats Brawl consistently. I think that can happen, because you named it. Red has the tools. It has the aggressive starts, and it has the cheap removal.
It would be cool if red is good, because then you get so many games in quick. I played Brawl, and I finished the league in like 30 minutes. A whole league.
Yeah.
So if you play red, I'd imagine that you could cut it down to like 20 to 30 minutes if it's a strong deck.
I think that just about does it about all the differences between our lists and the Brawl deck in general, right?
But that's really cool. There's still a lot of decisions, and I'm not quite sure on some of those points. Yeah, we have to tinker that a bit more.
Yes, and I definitely will put in some more research.
Which you can see on the stream, twitch.jackomattress.com.
Twitch.jackomattress.com. Yeah,
is it or slash or something? I cannot find him. Oh, so bad.
So it really sounds like anyone who is wanting to have anything to do with Brawl at the moment in a competitive sense is going to have to be across Brawl Chief of Compliance, know what the deck does, how it wins, how to beat it, if there is indeed a way to beat it. This kind of seems like the position that Brawl is in at the moment. It's been very, very heavily dominated by Brawl.
It's kind of logical, because it's a strong deck in the beginning of a format that evolves. It's a very easy strategy. It's very supported. People played what they wanted, so decks are not tuned or at least refined in their sense. It's a very easy prey. So maybe people find out what's good against it, play different decks, and find something that is much more effective.
Yeah, but what if that's not the case? I mean, we've seen this happen in 1v1 Commander, where Brawl was just too good and too oppressive. And Jamin, you and I have talked about this, the fact that you're sort of betting on the fact that Brawl Chief of Compliance is going to get banned.
I can certainly see that happening in the future if things don't get better. But like right now, I hope that they might still get better. But if they don't, yeah, maybe we have no other option than swinging the ban hammer once again.
Well, let's give it some time. Like, it felt, we are very biased because we played with it in this tournament. And
yeah, we spent like the whole evening just realizing how strong this deck was, right?
Yeah, so maybe it will level out, and it's just a blink of the snapshot of a moment. And right now it's just too powerful, but people didn't expect it. People didn't know. There were no deck lists published before in a tournament sense, because that was the first real tournament. So you will see. There might be chances, might be not.
And that's something I'm really excited about with Brawl. It's like this whole new format, and like it's so easy to experiment. It's so easy to get a hold of the cards. It's
also
great.
Changes the decks is cool, because you want to change something, it's probably cheap and easy.
Yeah, it's cheap and easy, and you'll just run it through League, and then you'll be like, oh, well, that didn't work out or something, and then you go back, and it's amazing.
Well, let's talk about this a little bit more here, because Brawl really does seem to have taken off. It's only a few weeks old. It's pretty accessible in terms of not only, you know, the cards that are being used to play it, because everyone has cards lying around from drafting or playing standard or whatever, but also just in terms of being an accessible format because of the rules, because of the card pool, because of the gameplay, because of just it's got a lot going for it. And there are huge names in Magic, as we discussed, that have already jumped on Brawl and started to play it and refine it and optimize it and find the best decks and whatever else and seem to be having a good time doing it. My question here is this a flash in the pan? Is Brawl just a format that we're all going to enjoy for 15 minutes and then, you know, it's going to go the way of tiny leaders or something like that? Or is this a format that's going to stick around for a long time? I know that you guys are pretty enamored by it so far. Do you think it has legs? Do you think it has staying power?
For my part, at least, I hope that it sticks around. I didn't really expect to get so soaked up into the format as I went in, but it's just a great experience for me, and I love it. I love the lower power level. I love the accessibility of the cards. I love 60 card singleton. It's all upside.
Yeah, I mean, it was revitalizing, something like this. It was very, very fun. And of course, yeah, it's like opening a new set, right? Drafting something new. New is always cool. You have to tinker and find out what works, what doesn't. It's what keeps Magic going, that everything changes. And I think, given all the circumstances, it has a very high likelihood of just staying. It's cheap. It's very fast, interactive. It's not as strong. There will be a lot of games. You have a lot of cards lying around that you can use anyway. I think this is a very good, very, on point idea for a new format.
It seems to me that this format just really does tick a lot of boxes. It's accessible, it's cheap, it's easy to get a hold of the cards. You can still, it doesn't punish you for playing pet decks. I mean, I'm in the process of building an Ariel Knight of Windgrace deck that I know isn't going to be competitive, but I know that I'm going to still have a lot of fun playing. And the whole thing here, like the general thrust of this format, it seems like there is, as you said, it's just all upside. It seems like it's a really, really great way to play the game, to play Magic, to play with cards that you don't normally play with, to explore different avenues, while really not making too many other compromises. You're not putting in huge amounts of money into cards like Force of Will or Liliana or the Veil. You're playing with cards that you probably picked up at random drafts and whatever else. I don't know. I'm a big fan of Brawl from the outset, and I think, based on what you two have said, I know that you guys are as well. And I guess that brings us to something that we want to really throw out to you, the listener. We've focused on 1v1 Commander. We've focused on competitive Commander for the first couple of months of this podcast. And, there's a lot going for that format, and we're still very big fans of it. But Brawl really seems to be on the up and up. And this week, as we sat down to discuss what we're going to talk about on the podcast this week, like all of us wanted to talk about Brawl. And because obviously of Jamin's strong result, because of the fact that we're all just excited about this shiny new toy. And so I guess the question for the listener is do you want to hear more of this? Is this something that you'd be interested in hearing more of? Do you want more coverage of Brawl, of the cards, of the events, of the interactions, of the developments, of the stuff that's going on? And is that something that we should perhaps be looking to create more content about? Because both of you guys, I know, are keen for us to talk more about Brawl in the future.
Yeah, so if you're listening right now and you like the Brawl content, let us what?
I wonder how you listen, not right now.
It'd be hard for them to
listen. If you listen in the future once you hear this sentence, which I said in the past.
If you're listening and you like the Brawl content, let us know.
It was a dependent.
It's the same. How they're not listening?
No, because there were two things that need to be filled there, Toffel. The person needs to be listening right now and enjoying the content. They can be listening around and hate the content, in which case Jamin's next sentence isn't going to apply to them.
All jokes aside, we genuinely want to hear your feedback on the Brawl content, and if you like that, jump on Twitter, let us know that you liked it or you didn't. Just one simple sentence, join our Discord and let us know there. Really, any way of feedback is super appreciated right now, because it will let us know how you feel about the format and the content about it.
This really is a point at which we're looking for a lot of feedback. We do want to know what people think of this content about Brawl and whether people want more of it, because, that's certainly on the cards and something that we really want to hear some voices about. So we're getting pretty close to wrapping up the show here, but of course, before that, it's time for the mailbag.
You've got mail.
Welcome to Jamin's Mailbag, where I, Jamin, will read out your mail. This week's mail comes from Maximilian, who writes, Hi, loads of love to you, your content, your humor, and all that cheesy stuff. To get straight to the point, I love playing tribal decks. I've already chatted with you and Toffel about a word boggart a goblin deck that will never work. My question now is, what about the other tribes? Elves, merfolk, humans, zombies, and so on. Why is there so little of them represented in the metagame? What problems do they have? Which kind of cards would be needed to make them competitive? Also, how did your attempt go with 4 wins on Marvin? Marvin is the new 3-mana 1/1 from Dominaria, the Elf Lord, if you will. Are you onto something here? When I was thinking about elves, I thought about Rada to always have a 2-mana accelerator ready. Insert more cheesy stuff here and keep up the good work. Max. There are 2 things we need to talk about here. First one being Marvin.
How did that go?
I actually tried it.
Well, it's step 1.
It's terrible.
Oh, no, Jamin. Say it ain't so, buddy.
It's
honey.
Pretty bad. Like, you always play out your mana dorks first, so oftentimes your Marvin doesn't even grow anymore because you already played elves. And then it just gets killed, and you don't have the mana to play your payoff, and it's just terrible.
Yeah. No, who would have known, actually?
Oh, what a surprise, a twist ending.
Yeah.
And that experiment also showed me something that might help answer Max's question, what makes tribal decks worse than the other decks in 1v1 Commander, obviously. We're not talking about Brawl. The other commanders don't give up card quality for synergy, and the synergies don't have the amount of payoff necessary to make up for the loss of power. Let's go with the Ward deck. The Ward is a goblin that is a 4-mana 3/3 that returns a goblin from your graveyard to your hand every turn, and that's a nice payoff, right? You draw a card every turn, but why wouldn't you just draw a card with Tymna every turn and just play a partner commander together with her? And then you don't even have to play goblins for that to draw cards. So for tribal decks to thrive in 1v1 Commander, we would have to have insane payoff cards for those tribes. Like, we're not talking about +1/+1, but we're talking about like locking your opponent out of the game levels of payoff.
Well, I mean, we've seen a tribal deck in 1v1 Commander be so good that it got banned because of Edgar Markov, but that really goes to show how strong the ability has to be. The Eminence ability of Edgar Markov required 0 mana, required no card to be invested, onto the battlefield or anything, and just juiced up cards that were, pretty bad on their own, but the tribal payoffs in that deck were so strong because of the initial investment being so low, and playing, even a 2 or a 3 mana lord as your tribal commander is just, it seems like it's too much to ask. It's a shame. This is not something that we're necessarily pleased about. It'd be cool if there was more tribal support in this format, but there just aren't the pieces there that are really good enough.
Also that it's 3 color made it so much better because you can have a variety of spells you can use in addition to your vampires. So having merfolks and elves are usually only 1 color, and the lords are not that good, and you have to fill your deck with a lot of cards that aren't that good because they have to be tribes. It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, and concluding this, I'll have to put 5 boosters into the pod.
Oh no, it's up to 15 now. If you'd like to get your mitts on those boosters, of course, all you need to do is jump onto Patreon and become one of our patrons. You can pledge as little as $1 per episode to go into the draw. Every month we give away boosters. Last month it was 20. This month it's going to be at least 15. And yeah, they could be yours. All you have to do, sign up and pledge it at as little as $1 at our Patreon. And that comes, of course, with a range of other benefits as well. The private Patreon password, if you meet any of us in real life, you get priority access to Jamin's mailbag, just as Maximilian, a proud patron, has done this week, and a range of other things as well. You can jump on the website and see it all there. Maximilian, thanks so much for your email. It's always great to hear from our revered listeners, especially those of you who are contributing via Patreon. So thanks so much for getting in touch. If you'd like to be on your means mailbag, you can too. Stacking100podcast@gmail.com is the place to send through your message. But that's just about everything. We can wrap things up. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Stacking Hundreds, the competitive Commander podcast. It's great to have you hang out with us this week, as it is every week, my friends. We're going to close things out with the usual housekeeping stuff. Stackinghundreds.net is where you can find everything you need to know about the show. Previous episodes, there are links to all of our various Twitter accounts. You can follow the show on Twitter at Stacking100s. Brawl Supreme inaugural champion Jamin Kauf streams regularly at twitch.com whoops, at justin.tv, no, it's twitch.tv/JackaMattress. And you can also find links to our Patreon there, ways to get in touch with the show, including a contact form and things like that. We have a Discord server set up, and lots of people tend to hang out there and chat about 1v1 Commander throughout the week. I mean, you set it up, and you generally keep an eye on what goes on there.
Well, yeah, this week I found my winning deck list on the server. I also included a Brawl subsection for you to, I don't know, throw Brawl content in there, ask us questions about Brawl, because most of the members who are into 1v1 Commander also are fairly interested in Brawl.
And we know that a lot of our listeners, as they are interested in 1v1 Commander, are probably going to be interested in Brawl as well. And so this week, more than ever before, we really do want to hear from you. I mean, if you're perhaps one of those people who doesn't generally get in touch with podcasts or, get in touch with the content creators that you listen to, we'd ask you just this one time, please do get in touch with us. Let us know if you'd like to hear more Brawl content, because it's something that, the three of us are interested in creating, and we may talk about it further based on the feedback that we get from you. So please do send us an email, do get at us on Twitter, and I'll be in GP Bologna. I think you boys are also going to be there as well. I'll be there on Friday, so tomorrow, if you're listening to this the day it comes out, I'll be there spell slinging and playing in the bounty event, so come and say hi if you want to. And Jamin and Toffel will be around on Saturday and Sunday. Jamin will have a lot of time on free time on Sunday if you want to catch up with him.
That was so obvious that joke was coming.
That was this low-hanging fruit just tastes so delicious. But yeah, it's great when people get in touch with us for any reason whatsoever, but we would love to get some feedback about Brawl. It is time to close the show, and there's only one way we know how to do that. Of course, it is time for Toffel's Tweet. Every week you have a chance to win 5 boosters. All you have to do is tweet with the hashtag Toffel's Tweet, and if Toffel picks your tweet to read out on the show, 5 boosters coming your way. Let's get to it. It's time to close the show with Toffel's Tweet.
Toffel's Tweet. Incoming. You know that there's this saying that time heals everything, and if you just ignore it enough, it won't be as relevant.
It's like when you're a kid at primary school and there's someone bullying you and your parent says, just ignore him and it'll go away.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like this is not one of those cases. Like,
oh, no. This is a very persistent bullying.
So this week's Toffel's Tweet is kind of, it's special. It's very supernatural this time, because I'm not sure what to do with it, but this was probably just somebody from the past looking into the future. We are talking about Malakim, and he tweeted us, ban Brawl and Zogo. And I have no idea how Zogo fits in that, but banning Brawl is very advanced technology and only stuff you can...
When did he tweet that?
And the 17th of April. Yeah, this is some advanced good stuff. Like, only stuff, of course, you can find at Toffel's Tweet. Hashtag Toffel's Tweet.
So he's looking into the future, and then
Yeah, I have no idea what happens with Zogo, because we don't know yet. It might be somewhere in the very distant future. It's like Nostradamus, right? It's like some of those things, like this will happen, and then this will happen, and we know now Brawl has to be banned.
Oh, dude! So we already know that Zergo is gonna be reprinted, and it's gonna be really powerful.
Yeah, exactly. This is the only explanation. So be aware. Be aware. Toffel's Tweet is giving the real truth here.
Imagine how much smarter you would have sounded if you'd read out this tweet the week that it actually had been posted.
It just wasn't the time, like Destiny has its place, and it's obviously right now, right here, if you're listening to this.